So today we're moving on to chapter 7. So everything that we learned about in chapter 6 is going to come into play in this chapter. So none of that stuff that we learned is going to disappear just yet. We're going to talk about congruence and transformation. Okay, what does congruence mean? Equal. Yes, it means equal. What's equal? The same. When we have two shapes, how do we know that they're congruent?
Their size.
Their sides are equal or congruent, and their
Measurement.
and their angles are congruent as well. Good. And we're also going to talk about transformation. So hopefully by the end of the day, you can use a series of transformations to create congruent figures. So what we did in the last two problems on page 508, we didn't just do a single transformation, we did a series of transformations. So before we start, we're going to review some of our transformations. So let's start off with rotation. Somebody tell me something about rotation. Amreen? Good. So what happens to the orientation? Does it change or stay the same? So if I have a triangle and I rotate it, the orientation changes, right? Okay. What else do we know about rotation? How do we rotate things? How many degrees?
90.
We talked about 90. We talked about 180, 360, and 270. Clockwise and counterclockwise. Good. So go ahead and copy these down. Okay. Our next transformation we're going to talk about is reflection. Tell me something about reflections.
It's kind of like the opposite of it. It's the same shape, but like on the other side.
Good. It's the same shape on the other side. It's like a mirror image. What about the orientation? Does it stay the same or is it different? It is different. So the orientation changes, and we flip it over the x-axis, which is a vertical reflection, or it flips over the y-axis, which is a horizontal reflection. The last transformation that we're going to talk about are translations. Who can tell me something about translations? Yes.
You pick the shape up and move it.
You pick the shape up and you move it. Good. What are the directions that you can move it? Up, down, left, and right. Good. What about the orientation?
It changes.
It doesn't.
It does not change. Good. So there's no change in the orientation, and you can slide it left, right, or up and down. So we just talked about 3 transformations, but how many did we learn about last chapter? We talked about 4. What was the one that we did not talk about today?
Dilation.
Dilation. Why did we not talk about dilations in this lesson? Huh?
Because when the dilation, you change the actual size of it.
Good. When we dilate things, we enlarge them or reduce them. Are those shapes then congruent?
No.
No. This whole lesson is about transformations and congruency. So that's why we are not going to be talking about dilation.
Yes, we got it.
Okay, first example. All you have to do is copy down the 2 triangles and their labels. We want to determine if the 2 figures are congruent by using transformations. Also explain your reasoning. We need to determine if these 2 shapes are congruent by using transformations. Can I use one transformation to get from triangle ABC to triangle XYZ? No, I can't use just one transformation. Anybody have an idea of where to start? I'm reading.
Reflection.
Okay, if I reflect it horizontally or vertically?
Horizontally.
Good, horizontally, it's going to look like this. Not exactly. Okay. Is that shape right on top of the other one? No. So now what do I have to do? Jordan? I'm going to translate it. Give me a direction.
Downward.
I'm going to translate down and to the left a little bit. So are these 2 shapes congruent?
Yes.
Yes. So what you should have on your paper is this. Yes, they're congruent. First reflect triangle ABC horizontally, then translate the triangle down and to the left. All right, our next example says to determine if The two figures are congruent by using transformations. Explain your reasoning. Go ahead on your paper and copy down these two shapes. What are these shapes, by the way? Trapezoids, very good. Alright, so what could we do to either A or B to make them fall on top of each other? Isel?
B, you could rotate 180 degrees.
Okay, so you want to rotate trapezoid B 180 degrees, so that means it's upside down, and then do what?
Translate it to the left.
And translate it to the left. Oop, come on. Very good. So, are they congruent?
Yes.
Yes, all of their sides are equal, all of their angles are equal. So they are congruent. First rotate, well, we have it a little bit opposite. I have rotate figure A, then translate A onto B. I did not like my description because I wasn't very clear. I want to rotate figure A 180 degrees, then translate A to the left. I'm sorry, to the right. Thanks, Jaden. Turn to page 511 in your book. Complete letters A and B. For letter A, you can name them A and B, but for letter B, they're not named, so use red and green in your description. So here is an example of what the book says you should have. They are congruent. A reflection followed by a translation maps figure A onto B. Again, as I said, you should be a little more specific, but that is right. Okay, no matter what you do, these two figures are not going to fall on top of each other because of the little, you have your line of 4 here and you have your line of 4 here. This one, the little part that sticks out, is the second one over. This one that sticks out is the third one over from this way. So they're never going to be congruent. Determine if the two figures are congruent by using transformations. Explain your reasoning. Copy down the two shapes. So no matter how many transformations you do, these two shapes are never going to be congruent. Our next example says the pattern below appears along the edge of the plate. What transformations could be used if the first figure is the pre-image and the second is the image? So you're going to rotate the one on the left-hand side 90 degrees, and then you translate it to the right. Are they congruent? Yes, they are. Turn to page 512 and do letter C. So a vertical reflection followed by a translation could be correct, or you could do the 180 rotation and then translate it left and down. In your book on page 512, do numbers 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead and check your answers. Again, the book answers aren't very specific. You should be using directional words.